Parents are fed up with the extremely high cost of daycare. Let's get some understanding.
If you don't have kids in daycare, then you probably just don't understand how expensive childcare truly is these days. I live in the state of Massachusetts, which is notoriously high for childcare, and the average cost of childcare for one kid per year is about $20,000. And I can tell you, as a mom of four with two kids in full-time daycare, I'm paying about $40,000 a year. I have a toddler, she's 2.5 years old, and then I have a kid in pre-K, she's 4 years old. And the 4-year-old is a little bit less expensive than the 2-year-old, and combined, it's about $3,400 a month for the two of them to go to full-time daycare, making it just shy of $40,000 a year. Now, something a lot of people don't know if they've never used daycare or haven't used it in a very long time is that the rates depend on the children's ages. So if you have an infant in my center, it's over $100 a day. So you're spending over $500 a week, over $2,000 a month for one child in full-time daycare. And so this cost can go up depending on your child's age. Also, depending on what kind of center you're in. I am in a town-based childcare center. If you go down the street to the corporate center, it is much more expensive. It's slightly less expensive if you go to something like a home daycare, for example. But typically a home daycare is still anywhere between like $65 to $75 a day. So yes, childcare costs about $40,000 for two children, at least in the state of Massachusetts and in many other states. I think the average cost of childcare for one child per year is about $13,000 to $15,000. So it is quite expensive.
Whoo, she said a mouthful there. I wasn't aware of how extremely expensive childcare was. Like I said, I don't have any children, but hearing these numbers, now I know that is Massachusetts, but $20,000 for one child, two children, $40,000 a year. I mean, my lord. I mean, she must be doing. Her family must be doing at least decent financially to be able to even stomach $3,500 a month in childcare expenses just for two children. And she said she had four. Man, this is downright diabolical.
To tell me that some daycares got people out here paying $300 a week for care, and that's per child. When did that happen? My mother used to have an in-home daycare center with a teaching program because she used to be in the school system, and she had it for over 10 years up until I believe 2014. And during that time, I think initially she was charging like $90 per week per kid, but eventually it got up to $125 per week, which wasn't a steal of a deal. That was actually comparable to what other in-home providers and other centers were charging at the time. Some of the kids were with her from birth until they went to kindergarten, but others transferred to other centers that had full-fledged preschool programs. And even then, they were only paying maybe an extra $25 or $30 from what we were charging on a weekly basis. So for $500 to $600 a month, you could get full-time care, which was reasonable. So to see these prices now, I mean, that is just crazy to me. And I realize that, costs do go up and sometimes you have to charge more, but I just hope that some of these centers are also paying their teachers more.
Well, after hearing at 20,000 a month for one child, I mean, $300 a week doesn't sound too bad. With 300 a week times four, so that gives you what, 1,200. 1,200 times 12, we're looking at about 14 grand, 14,400. I mean, that sounds a lot more reasonable than 20,000. But then again, that's just for one child, so that's still almost $15,000 a month just for one child. Honestly, it almost makes sense for if you have two or three children around the same age and they all have to go to daycare, for one of the parents to just stay home and watch the kids full time. You'll probably be better off, probably actually be saving money.
These daycare prices are getting out of control. Our daycare just sent us the 2024 rates. Preschooler, $382 a week. Infant, $471 a week. These are weekly prices. I mean, look at these 2-day, 3-day prices as well. These were the 2023 prices. Infant, $449 a week. Preschool, $364 a week. 2022 rates. Infant, $413 a week. Preschool, $335 a week. 2021 rates. Infant, $382 a week. Preschool, $310 a week. Now let's take a sec to compare. 2021 infant was $382 a week. And now the infant rate, $471 a week. That's almost $100 increase from 2024 compared to 2021. I have a preschooler and an infant. Now, luckily, my infant won't start daycare until March, but that's going to be $382 plus $471 a week. Oh, wait, the one that's the cheaper of the two, you get 10% off. So let me take that back. $382 minus 10% plus $471. Let me do that math real quick. $814.80 a week. I mean, how are people doing this?
If you have not gotten anything from these videos so far, in 2024, again, like I said, we have to bring back strategic partnerships. We have to put love on the back burner, and you gotta, if you want to get with someone, you want to, you want to have a child, you want to continue on a legacy, leave a legacy when you're gone behind, you have to strategically get with a person who, number one, has a career or a skill set, and number two, like I said, y'all have to understand that y'all gonna have to be a team, because with these type of prices, I mean, there's no way the average person can afford to swing these daycare prices alone. Literally, these are salaries. These are what some people make all year or close to it.
I am a resident doctor, and having to pay this is a lot. And luckily, I make more than the typical resident because I'm active duty military, because it's ridiculous. I mean, how are you guys doing this? How are people doing this? Is this the daycare prices in other big cities? I mean, this is how it is here in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, but is this how it is everywhere else?
You got doctors complaining. Now, she is in residency, so she's not at her full earning capacity yet, but still, I mean, let's think about it. Even as a resident, she probably makes more than the average American. And if she's complaining, that doesn't bode well for anybody else.
Yes, it does. I know people don't want to believe it costs that much, but it absolutely does cost that much money. And I'll show you how. These are the rates in my town. This is for infants, so it's $110 a day. That's the lowest you can pay, and that's if you're going for 5 days a week. The most you'll pay if you do 1 day drop-in is $153. It drops when they become a toddler, which is 15 months old, and it drops even more when they become a preschooler, right? So $97 a day if you do 5 days. And it gets less and less as they get older, which is fantastic. But just for context, for one infant, and most people have 2 children, one infant for 5 days a week, $2,200 a month. So when I tell you I have 4 kids and I pay $5,000 a month in childcare, I'm not making that number up. That is
$5,000 a month in childcare. $60,000 a year. My Lord.
the reality and the cost of childcare. For the people who are going to recommend, hey, you should do a nanny. A nanny's way less expensive. It's also not, right? The more kids you have, the higher the rate is that they're going to charge you for childcare. So I have 4 children and we need 40 hours a week. At a minimum, that'd be like $35 an hour. At 40 hours a week, it's like $5,600 a month. So daycare does cost this much, and nanny does cost this much. Childcare is insanely expensive these days and inaccessible. And I'm really tired of the older generation, and I say that because this is Grammy. I'm really tired of them not acknowledging the fact that the cost for childcare is vastly different today than it was when they were raising kids.
If I had kids, they'd be there with grandma. Like I said, we're gonna have to bring back that village mentality. I mean, $5,000 a month, my Lord. Like, you gotta understand how much money you have to be making per year just to spend $5,000 a month just on childcare. That's not including housing. That's not including insurance. That's not including saving for retirement. That's not including for car payments, utilities, cell phone bills. The kids still got to eat when they're at home. Like I said, this video right here, make sure we share this video, like This needs to be mandatory viewing for all children, young teens, young adults who do not have children about how extremely expensive childcare is, and you got to make sure you wrap it up.
Daycare costs being so astronomical these days, I feel like a lot of two-parent households are going to go down to just one parent working. And I know that sounds backwards, but if you really run the math, if daycare is costing the average family $2,000 to $3,000 a month, let's use a husband and wife as an example. If a husband made $90,000 a year, his take-home pay after taxes is probably around $75,000. If the wife goes, I'm going to go get a job for $50,000 so we can get to $140,000, that's going to help our family. But after taxes, it's only $38,000 more. And if your daycare cost is $2,500 a month, that's $30,000 for the year. So you're working 40 hours a week and commuting for only $8,000 extra for the whole year, $650 a month. I feel like the parents could work out, like, how do we downgrade our cars, or what do we do to make up that $650? I feel like a lot of parents now are going to figure out for just 5 years until the kids are in kindergarten how to have one parent work so they can save the money, raise their children, and then when they go to kindergarten, go get that job for $50,000, $60,000. Now all of a sudden they can start building wealth again. But that's kind of an interesting concept. I would break down your numbers and see if it's really worth it when it's all said and done, getting a second job, but also having to have daycare.
Yeah, like I said, this was an excellent breakdown. Like I said, unless the second parent is making close to what the first parent makes, it really doesn't even make mathematical sense.
Y'all, we got to talk about the price of daycare. We have to talk about it. Okay? This is the lip bar, by the way. I love their new lip liners. But anyway, the price of daycare is so high right now that me and my husband had to make the decision to take my son out of daycare for the summer. Daycare is so expensive, and I know that the teachers that are working there, they're working hard and they're not making a lot of money, which is really disappointing, because if you're paying like a mortgage in daycare, why are the workers not getting paid a lot of money? I know there's some science behind that, there's some math behind that, but honestly, just on the parent side of things, it's so expensive. Literally, my son just turned 3, and I love the fact that he has structure and he has like somewhere to be during the day, but at the same time, paying $1,400 in my area where I live, it's like $1,400 a month for him to go to school, and that's the average. So even when we shopped around and tried to get a good
And from the other videos that we watched, $1,400, that's actually cheap. That's actually on the low side.
price, $1,400 a month for daycare, like I was like, you know what? I'll just keep him. But it's been so challenging because my husband and I are both working. We're both entrepreneurs. We have a lot going on. Like this morning, we had a dual meeting that we had to be at 9 a.m. And I'm like, oh my God, like, let me make sure that the kids have somewhere to be. Primarily my son, because the older kids, they're fine. But my son, it's like, yo, what's going on with the daycare? Like, can we get a program? And then the other thing is, when you make a certain amount of money and you're in a certain tax bracket, you don't qualify. This is a lip bar also. You don't qualify for certain programs. So like even Head Start and stuff like that, we don't qualify for Head Start. We don't qualify for any of those programs. So it's like, yo, man.
This is insane. And I think about it. This is a family. So you have a husband and a wife working, and they still had to pull the son out of a daycare in the summertime because they couldn't afford it. And this touches back on to a video that I did, Is the Middle Class Disappearing? I will leave the link in the description below, or here, that talks about how the middle class pay majority of the taxes, and they make just enough money to keep the lights on, but they don't qualify for any special programs to get any assistance like poor people do.
My 2 kids, and the cheapest that I have been able to find is $30.
So I just wanted to come on here and make a video in reference to what this lady said. So as a previous childcare provider, I feel like it is so crazy that people are out here charging people $30 an hour to keep your kids. Let's state the reasoning why. So I always been the person where I charge the parents like per day, and if your kids come on a weekly basis, then I charge you per week. So my base pay started out at $30 a day. I feel like that's reasonable, and that can also like let me make my money and also help the parents out. Because if you logically think about how a person is getting paid from their job, $30 an hour is insane. If a person works somewhere and they make $30 an hour, how are they supposed to pay you those same hours there at work, $30? They just gave you everything that they made. Make it make sense. So yeah, like I was saying, I always provided affordable childcare. So like I started out at $150 a week, but in her video she did mention that the daycare was going to close for like 2 weeks and that she would still have to pay. Now I see why daycares do that, because when I didn't put in place rules when I started my in-home daycare. I pretty much just started winging it, and they literally took total advantage of me. It would be days where I set aside my time, my energy, and everything for their child, and then they message me 10 minutes before the day is starting, hey, they're not coming today. So guess what? If the kids are not there, guess what? I don't get paid. So I do see why daycares have in place where you have to pay even if the child is not there, but to make a parent pay for 2 weeks because you guys are closing is insane to me.
Yeah, these daycares, man, it seems like the daycare industry, they got a chokehold. I mean, like I said, especially if you're dealing with a single parent, they have to work. I mean, what other option do you have, especially if you have no family support? I mean, you're literally at the mercy of the daycare.
When somebody tells you they can't afford to have children, this is what they're talking about. A woman in my town's Facebook group shared these daycare rates today, and she said, how do you afford kids here? Because nobody knows how anybody is paying for this. For an infant for 5 days a week with 10 hours of care, it is $664 a week. That is just shy of $35,000 a year for one child. And the price does not drop that much when they hit pre-K here. It's $521 a week, which is about like $28,000 a year, okay? These are incredibly high rates for daycare. And of course, you could drop down to 9 hours a day or whatever it might be. But here's the thing. When you go to daycare, typically you're going to take the most hours because you have to commute to work, you have to commute back from work, and you have to work 8 hours a day. And unfortunately, when you miss pickup by 1 minute, they start charging you like $2 a minute. So usually it's more cost effective just to pay the higher rate for the 10 hours than to pay for the 9 hours, which is like crazy because it's 1 hour difference. These are rates for one kid. We were talking about one child. Imagine if a family has 2 kids. They're paying $50,000, $60,000 a year for childcare. That is unsustainable for most families. And yes, the cost goes down slightly as they get older. But what that doesn't account for, that rate sheet, is the annual increase. Every single September, daycare centers raise their tuitions because they have to. And typically that's anywhere between 5 to 20%. And most people are looking at 10% increase. So even though you have that savings when they hit pre-K, by the time your kid hits pre-K, it's been 4 or 5 years. That rate has gone up exponentially, okay? So when someone tells you they can't afford to have children, oftentimes it's because of the cost of childcare. And if it's not just the cost of childcare, it's the cost of housing and groceries, and you compound all those things, healthcare costs, it's incredibly expensive. I did not know, looking back 4 or 5 years ago when I first started having kids, that I would be paying this much money for daycare because the rates looked drastically different. The rates over the last 20 years or something have gone up like 200%. It is wild how expensive childcare is in our country. If we had affordable childcare, it would not only benefit families and children, it would benefit the economy, it would benefit businesses, and it would benefit us as a greater society. The economy would be better for it. This is not just a parent problem, right? But like people constantly are looking at adults who are married or of, birthing years and saying, why aren't you having kids? And we're looking around saying, how could we possibly have kids when we can't even afford to buy a house?
She's spot on. I mean, when you talk about $25,000, $30,000 for one child, just to go to daycare, and like I said, the increase of housing, everything is increased. Groceries. I mean, it's absolutely it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all.
If you have 2 under 2, can you please tell me how you're affording daycare? Because I'm trying to have this TikTok thing pop off so I can be an affiliate and, make some money off of here so I continue to be a stay-at-home mom. But I was looking into daycares to, go back to work to help my husband. The daycares went like $3,000 a month for 2 under 2. Excuse me? And the thing is, I have my CDA and I was a daycare worker before I became a stay-at-home mom, and I've been a nanny, and I've had a lot of jobs, but like I know what they're paying their employees. And we don't even make that kind of money a month to be able to afford the daycare. So like, what is happening?
Sounds like it's big money in the daycare business. I mean, sounds like they're charging exorbitant amounts to take care of one child. They're barely paying the teachers. Yeah.
Charge $1,000 a week for daycare per child. I don't care how old your child is. I don't care if your child's potty trained or not. It's just a flat rate of $1,000 per week. And I seem to feel like that's a pretty fair price, especially with inflation. However, I do seem to get a lot of hate behind this. Luckily, the parents that I currently have, their children never been to daycare and they never been away from their parents, so they don't know what else to expect. However, they...
Is she joking? Is this a home daycare? This looks like this is her house. And she's charging $1,000 a week per child and giving them little grapes that's not even cut up. Lord. Now she running a finesse. I mean, she can't even use the excuse that we got to build in a commercial property. We got overhead. This is her house.
They feel I should get paid my worth for what I do, creating a positive impact, a loving, welcoming environment for their children so they can thrive and be good people in today's society. We do a lot of arts and crafts, science experiments.
I'm sorry. Do you see this? Do you see the type of finesse that she is running here? This is her home. She got them playing with some pumpkin mix, a can of pumpkin mix, and mixing it up with some flour, blowing some bubbles. I mean, this is all costing her very minimal. This stuff that she's talking about here, some they like doing arts and crafts and baking. That's like $20 worth of material. You're getting $1,000 a wop per kid. 5 kids, that's $5,000 a week. That's $20,000 a month. That's $250,000 for 5 kids. Might be time to go into the daycare business.
Free play, and lots of fun.
Free play? The baby was just sitting on your couch. Oh, we might have to do a part 2 to this.
Here, the children are satisfied, and if you are a daycare provider, you should get paid your worth too.
Wow. Yeah, she got a hell of an operation running there. She's literally at her crib. Got them playing out back, bought some chalk, spent maybe $2,000 in little, bicycles they could ride around, little easels they could write on, and she's charging $1,000 a wop. Let me know in the comments below how much you pay per week for childcare. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let's get this video out so maybe we can, change the mind at least 1 or 2 young adults or young children so they can see how expensive having a child is and how expensive child care is.